All right, guys, Cookware Power Hour. This is going to be fun. I've never tried to talk about how to sell cookware and cook at the same time. So I'm very excited to do something new with you guys today. And I know there's a wide variety of people in this room. There's people that have sold a lot of cookware, a little bit of cookware, people that have all of the cookware 3 times. They've got all of the cookware 1 time. That's okay. So by a show of hands, I'm curious, just before we get started, who here owns the cookware personally at their house? Okay, a few people don't. Okay, great. All right, now the next fun question is, for those of you that have the cookware at your house, who actually uses it? Okay, a few people. All right, great. All right, so I remember about 10 years ago, I think is when it was, where Regalware came in and they did a whole kind of pitch on some of the fancy terms and needs and wants around the cookware, and there was a lot of things that back in 2014, I had just gone through a push, and I think I sold 3 cookware sets and all 3 returned. So I was a little frustrated, I think, by the cookware when I first started selling it, because who here has ever sold cookware and have them return it because they don't know how to use it? All right. So it took me about 4 years to kind of get over this idea that this awesome product that I didn't think was so awesome was worth the investment for customers, let alone myself. So I was still using that stupid green pan that my parents gave me, like, hey, take the green pan to college type of thing, and I just kept using it. It was in 2017, 2018 in a mentoring group with Jason Jeffrey, where he kind of just started he was like, you should just sell more cookware. You should just be more intentional about selling cookware. And I was like, I just still have the PTSD. And I feel like if you still have some PTSD about selling pots and pans, you're like, man, I'm about to sell this pots and pans set, and I don't know in about 3 weeks if I'm going to get a negative 2,200 CPO on my account. It's not a fun feeling, right? Exactly. It's a gun to the head type feeling. It's not fun. So in 2018 and 2019, and again, big shout out to Seth Kinzer for kind of like tackling this with me head on. We were kind of like, how do we get better at selling pots and pans, and also at the same time, how do we help people buy them and then not return them 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later and get super frustrated? And that's kind of when my cookware journey really kind of started, where I was like, okay, well, I'm actually going to start using the pans. I'm going to start getting involved with how they actually work, why they work so well. And I think it took me, again, some trial and error. And for those of you that have used the pots and pans, you guys probably have had some trial and error with them as well. You guys have probably burnt something to a crisp. You probably have made bacon and it was so greasy it never seemed like it was ever going to get clean, right? We've all been there. But it was kind of like stepping into, how can I sell more pots and pans to the person that wants to buy them? Because I think for me, I was sold that pots and pans, the Cutco pots and pans were like the health benefits, the reason why people buy them. You got to sell how fancy and how awesome these pots and pans work just because they make vegetables so healthy. But what I kind of came to realize through just working with other people, Mike Dowd included, he was like, well, what if we just sell it to the 90%, which is the person that just wants a pot and pan they don't have to buy again in 3 years. And he kind of flipped it. He was all of a sudden, he was like, again, we all love Mike. He was like, I'm going to put a half a freaking stick of butter in for an omelet type of guy, right? Totally over the board on butter, but he's like, butter's your best friend. And I was like, I love butter. And I think if you buy good butter, if you use it, again, wisely, I think it's actually better than oil in some points. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to start leaning into, these are really easy to use and they're really easy to clean. It's not about like, they're super healthy, right? Now, you have the opportunity to use them healthy. Like you can use them when, like if you want to have carrots with just a little bit of water, which we'll show you today, you can do that. Now, unfortunately, to burst your bubble, I cannot feed you anything today. So there's laws, I guess, in Florida that you have to have a license to be able to cook something and then feed it. So that is not going to be happening today. But my goal today is for those of you that have either never used it or used it at home and everything burns and sticks, I want you to show you how easy it is to just do a couple quick tests to make sure that you're using them correctly. I also want to show you how you can talk to customers in a way that will make them feel comfortable about buying it. And again, you guys have, for those of you that have actually heard me talk or speak on cookware, you probably have heard me speak on it saying things like, at the end of the day, like it's is something that you can, if you teach a person how to use it, by the end of the demonstration, they'll be like, okay, I'm ready to buy this. Knives are different. Knives, you cut leather a couple times and people are like, oh my God, I've never cut with anything like that. But it was funny, Eileen, she got all this stuff amazing, so a big quick round of applause for Eileen for getting this all, Cutco Events, for getting this all set up. So she was like, so do you use this when you're selling cookware? I'm like, no, I just use my phone, right? Because I just teach people how to use it through my phone, right? So today, we're gonna get the opportunity to use this stuff, and I'm gonna use it. I'll still show you the videos that I used today. But today we're gonna do a few different things, and they're all very basic, and I think that the reason I'm doing stuff basic today is because I can't feed you. I was gonna do an awesome chili, but I can't feed you the chili, so we skipped that. But we're gonna do eggs 3 different ways today. I'm gonna do a pound of ground beef, and then we're gonna do some carrots and some broccoli in the same pan without any of the flavors mixing. So very, very basic stuff. So today, we're gonna, hopefully by the end of this, we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. So for those of you that are here that have some questions on whether it's a certain recipe or just a certain tactic on how to sell more pots and pans, again, you can feel free to ask me any questions at the end as well. So who here has ever tried to make an egg in a Cutco pan? Who here has ever had an egg stick in a Cutco pan? If you're not raising your hand, you haven't actually cooked with a Cutco pan, okay? Because they stick from time to time, okay? So there's 3 eggs that you can make. You can make an over easy egg, scrambled egg, and you can also do an omelet, right? I don't know about you guys, I kind of go through phases of eggs where I'm like, okay, sometimes I'm all in on over easy eggs. That's what I'm in right now, that's my phase. Sometimes I'm an omelet guy and sometimes as a scramble guy. So I think the biggest thing that people struggle with is a scramble. So we're gonna end with the scramble, but I'm just gonna do a couple of easy ones with some over easy and an omelet quick. So the great thing about these things is they are super quick. So let's see if we can make this work. 1600 degrees, here we go. Just kidding. This is something just good to know too for you guys. I was talking to one of the cookware guys that actually used to sell cookware. It was a different brand of cookware. I don't ever cook on I think this is technically an induction stovetop. I never cook on an induction stovetop, but this actually tells you how hot this should be. Eggs should be at 200 degrees, just so you guys know. We're gonna do the water test. Who here has heard of the water test today? Very, very simple, very, very easy. All right, so my big thing that I tell my customers is I am jokingly not taking my own advice right now, is get all of your stuff prepped before you start to cook. So basically what I tell my customers is when you're making an omelet or you're making an over easy omelet or an over easy eggs, usually about 60 to 90 seconds is really technically all you need. Sorry to the tablecloths in advance, by the way, if these tablecloths get a couple of eggs on them today. So I'm just gonna do a little easy. We're gonna do a two egg scramble real quick. Who here likes scrambled eggs? I love me some scramble. All right, shout out to the Cutco whisk. All right, so the easiest way, in my opinion, guys, to help a person learn how to use Cutco cookware is an analogy that every single person that you sell Cutco to can appreciate and understand. So the question that I always ask my customers is, hey, I'm curious, Mrs. Jones, would you ever take a cold steak and put it onto a cold grill, right? And all the time, Mr. Jones almost looks at you like you're offending him. He's like, how dare you say something like that? You're saying that I would put a cold steak on a cold grill, right? And I always ask the question after, which I think is the more important question, because some people are just confused as to why you're asking it in the first place. And they'll say, why? I ask why. And they're like, well, I don't know, because it would probably stick. All right, so this is a zoom in opportunity here. All right, so putting a little bit of water onto this pan, guys. For those of you that can't see this water is not bouncing yet, okay? It's just kind of sitting there and sizzling, okay? So then I ask the question to my customers, like, cool, yeah, so if you take a cold steak and put it on a cold grill, all that's gonna happen is just gonna stick, right? Because the stainless steel on your grill is just not hot enough yet. So if you take a cold pan and put cold food in it, Mrs. Jones, what do you think is going to happen? And every single customer goes, well, it's going to stick. So ironically, Mrs. Jones, the reason why people have problems with stainless steel is they literally just don't know how to use it, right? So again, guys, that probably took less than 90 seconds, right? This pan is very hot right now, right? It's perfectly bouncing, right? So I'm just going to chill for a second. Let this pan cool down just a little bit. And then I'll take butter. I love butter. All right, so take a little bit of butter. Now, again, you probably have heard Jason talk about this too in some of the cookware videos he does. Always want your butter to sizzle. Sizzling butter is a good thing. Okay, so we're going to coat that around the pan. Super easy. Okay, give it 5-10 seconds. Let that butter get onto the pan a little bit. And we're going to put our eggs in. Super easy. Okay. So analogies. Using analogies to take things that your customers are already doing is how you're going to sell more Cutco cookware. Okay? If you just tell your customer, hey, Mrs. Jones, if you try to take cold food and put it into a cold pan and it's not going to work, you'd be surprised how many people have a light switch just flip on. They're like, that's it? I'm like, that's it. The biggest problem, in my opinion, that reps do is they overcomplicate cookware. We are too wordy when we are talking about cookware. We use a lot of stories when we talk about Cutco. I think using stories within cookware is also super important as well. So thinking about when your parents did eggs for you in the morning, right? Okay, so when I'm doing an omelet, I like to do a little bit of kind of let those eggs bleed around a little bit. Okay. So when you're using stories, I like to use the example of, again, for me, specifically with eggs, is I use myself. I'm like, yeah, Mrs. Jones, like I would be making eggs, and every single time I cooked in them for like 4 years, they would just stick the whole entire time I was in college, right? And I was like, okay, I'm just over it. I'm just not even going to use them anymore, right? And it's because I was just given false information. I just didn't know that you had to make the frickin' pan hot. And you'd be surprised, guys, that people go 60 years of their life never knowing that they're just supposed to preheat a stainless steel pan before they put butter or oil in. I know that's a crazy concept, but a lot of people have been sold this bill of goods for the last 30 to 40 years that non-stick is the best thing ever, okay? And here we are making an omelet, right, where things aren't gonna stick and burn, right? Like, look at this. We got an egg that is sliding around the pan. Okay, and again, I'm sorry for the tablecloths. Right? So, again, it's, so who here has ever heard of a PFOA? Okay, so this is a fun fact that I learned recently. Who here has ever heard of the documentary, The Devil We Know? Anybody heard of that one? If you haven't watched it yet, you should watch it. Okay, it talks about PFOAs. Okay? PFOAs. PFOA is the only chemical that is technically banned by the FDA. Look at that, guys. We got an omelet that's just sliding around the pan. Look at that. Crazy concept. Oh my gosh. You're telling me that you're cooking an egg and it's not sticking? Holy buckets. Okay. My God, crazy. All right, so a PFOA is the only chemical that is actually banned by the FDA, but there are literally thousands of other chemicals that do the exact same thing that a PFOA does. It's just not yet banned by the FDA. Okay, so that's why we hear the new granite core, the new copper core, the new titanium core every other year. Not even every other year. It's like every other 6 months. It just seems like there's something new. All right, guys, here's an omelet that's just gonna, sorry for my cameraman coming back for you. Yeah, it's a little bit of a runny omelet, but slides out of the pan. Voila. I know it looks good, but you guys can't eat it. I'm sorry. Okay. All right, next one. All right, so the PFOA thing, okay, is a thing that a lot of people just kind of get burned by. Now, as far as cleaning, guys, okay, unfortunately, we don't have access to a sink, okay? The great thing about that omelet is that would have literally taken a paper towel and a little bit of soap and water. That's a clean pan, okay? All right, now we're gonna do, what do we wanna do next? We wanna do a scramble? We're gonna do over easies. Yeah, we don't need to use all the eggs. Okay, so we're gonna preheat this one. Okay, so how I talk about PFOAs is I'm like, yeah, so here's the deal, Mrs. Jones. A lot of people, they'll buy like stainless steel pots, right? It's crazy. You probably have noticed that a lot of your customers actually have the big, huge 10-quart stainless steel pots because they don't really make a nonstick version of a stainless steel pot or a nonstick 10-quart pot, right? But it's just because they keep getting sold this idea that what they're putting their food on is safe, right? But there's no way for us to really technically prove if what is going into the pan with the chemicals is really safe or not. So what I tell my customers, I'm like, at the end of the day, Mrs. Jones, there's a lot of peace of mind that what you put into the Cookware pan is what you get out. So if you love butter, you love oil, use butter and oil, right? If you like to use Pam spray, use Pam spray. But if you look at the ingredients on Pam spray, Mrs. Jones, it's a lot of stuff that I can't even like pronounce, right? So I'm like, grade A butter, right? Good butter, buy it from a source where it's being sourced ethically as much as you possibly can. I love butter. I think it's the best thing for you, right? As far as a ingredient when you're making chicken or ground beef like we're gonna do today, right? So we're gonna actually do pans at the same time for this one. Ooh, slow down. Getting really outside of my comfort zone today, guys. It's gonna be great. All right. Ooh, thanks, guys. All right, so when I'm talking about eggs specifically, again, it's a big thing for me to talk to my customers about how it's really important to burst bubbles, right? Fear bubbles are what a lot of your customers have. A lot of your customers are just a little bit nervous about using stainless steel because what do most people that have stainless steel say about their stainless steel? It sticks, right? That's always the thing that people say about stainless steel. They're like, yeah, everything sticks and burns, like every single time, right? So I tell my customers, I'm like, hey, through the proof of videos, right? Now, again, I don't do this. I'm not able to cook, right? I'm not able to, for those of you that, again, for those of you that actually sell pots and pans already, you guys can imagine how tedious this would be while trying to sell pots and pans, which is cleaning and cooking all at the same time, while we're also trying to sell knives at the same time too, right? So for me, it's a big thing for me to be able to say, hey, like I can show you through my own personal experience just on my phone, right? So if I were you guys, if you have not done this already, if you have a to-do list for NET, one of your to-do lists should be make a video of yourself making eggs 3 different ways. So have a video of yourself making a scrambled egg. Have a video of yourself doing an over easy egg. Have a video of yourself doing an omelet. God, this thing is slick. I might need to buy one of these, actually. This is fancy. Eileen, you guys might have made a sale today. I don't really have a bowl to do this. We're going to do this anyway. So yeah, so if you don't have actual videos of yourself doing it, guys, it's really hard for your customers to believe what you're selling. Because it's like, okay, well, did this guy even use it? Because you have to remind yourself, guys, when you guys are selling pots and pans, your customers have what I call as baggage coming into even listening to what you have to say about something they already have a pre-existing belief on doesn't work, okay? Now, there's a couple things that I've learned specifically about types of stainless. Now, I'm not the Regalware rep, okay? But I've learned a few things about our type of pots and pans that other stainless steel do not actually have, okay? Who here has ever heard of All-Clad? Okay? All-Clad is the best thing that you can buy in a store that is stainless, okay? Best thing you can buy in a store that's stainless, okay? Use 1810 stainless, it's very high quality, okay? So there's a couple differences between our pans and an 1810 stainless pan, okay? So the first things first, the Cookware pans, what I love about them is they're not riveted, right? All-Clad is always going to be riveted, right? So the handle will get hot because it does transfer heat. Now, our handle can also transfer heat if you are cooking on gas and you're cooking on too high of a heat, because that flame can actually escape around the pan and get to the handle, right? But what we tell our customers, you guys probably already know, what temperature should you use Cookware pans on? Medium to low, right? We always say medium to low is all you need to know unless you're boiling water, right? Even if you're searing a steak, in my opinion, I really like just using medium to low heat. I really do think that it is the best temperature, right? Okay? So when it comes to all-clad, right, it's like, and also other stainless steel, 1810 is not a perfect steel, okay? So 1810 is actually microscopically porous, okay? So microscopically porous, what that means is over the period of a few years, when a person is using a normal stainless steel pan, what actually can happen is food particles can actually get left inside, right, of those pores of the pans, right? So as disgusting as it sounds, I always say to Mrs. Jones, I'm like, what's actually kind of ironic is your pans are not actually, your pans or your food is actually not sticking to the pan. It's actually sticking to the leftover food that's still inside of the pan, right? From the years and years and years that you've used these pans, right? I'm glad that I got a couple of nasty faces there. They're like, oh, ew, gross, right? It is kind of gross, by the way, right? So what's cool about the Cookware pans, Mrs. Jones, is we use a surgical grade level of stainless steel. Okay, what that essentially means for you, Mrs. Jones, is it's perfect, right? So what that means is you can use a metal utensil over the period of, again, 50 to 100 years, right? You don't have to worry about the performance of the pan dipping over the course of the next 25, 30, 40, 50 years that you own these. These are gonna work like the day you got them in 25 years. And if they don't, send them in. And then 2 weeks later, guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna give you a new one. If you break a handle, you warp a pan, good luck, because they're built like a tank, right? But if you do that, it's still covered, okay? All right, guys, I just talked massively excitedness about these cool cooktops. There we go. All right, we're gonna do that one first. All right, so we're gonna do, we'll do a scramble with this one. Okay, I have no idea why I even use milk because I'm not feeding you guys, but I like milk with my eggs. Salt and pepper is always a good thing too. Okay, so basically I kind of tell my customers, I'm like, here's the deal, Mrs. Jones. The problem is because you're also just cooking with stainless, even though stainless is, you're always going to be able to clean stainless, right? It's not the best conductor of heat, and that's where our three plies of aluminum come into play. So I always say, how I word it, I say, Mrs. Jones, what's cool about the Cookware pans is that we sandwich 3 layers of aluminum. There we go. There we go. Now I've cooked it too fast, guys. Put myself in a predicament. All right. All right. Butter, 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 butter. All right. So I also believe too, when you're doing a scramble, it's really good to get the top layers of the pans as well. That's a good thing to do. Okay. I'm just practicing for when I have 4 kids. I have to have like all of the things going at the same time right now. And also helping with them with their math homework, you know? All right, here we go. Okay, so we'll do this one first. Okay. All right, we'll do a little over easy. Okay. So here's what's great, guys. You guys are actually getting to experience me cook on a new cooktop for the first time ever. And what's interesting about this experience is it's the exact same thing for your customers. They're cooking with the Cookware pots and pans on a surface that they, even though they know, they have not cooked with it before. So for them to get used to cooking with the Cookware pans, I'm a big believer, and we'll talk about this throughout today, big believer in selling your customers specifically on not the idea that everything is going to be perfect. They're going to screw up. Things are going to stick, things are going to burn, and that's all right. Right? Colleen and I, we cook in our kitchen, and we still manage to screw things up from time to time. But not ever are we sitting there blaming our pots and pans. We're blaming ourselves. Because we're like, the pots and pans are perfect. We know that the pots and pans work. It's just we didn't either cook at the right temperature, we didn't preheat long enough, or we got carried away doing something else and we were paying attention and something burned, right? So when you're talking to your customers, again, like using things over and over, like how many times do you think about when we're selling knives, we use guaranteed forever, free sharpening for life? We use it all the time, right? Because it's like that's a huge selling point for Cutco pots and pans. So for us, with pots and pans, it's all about intentionality about what you're saying to your customers to set the right expectations, right? So I show videos, and I will show you them today. I show them videos of things being burnt. Shout out to Brian Carter. He's the most, I think, vulnerable person when it comes to just cooking in his kitchen and taking videos of things that don't look good, right? Specifically a pan that is just completely torched with bacon after the fact. He's like, yeah, that's torched, but watch how easy it is to clean, right? So setting the right expectations that, hey guys, Mrs. or Mrs. Jones, you're gonna screw some things up, and that's all right. If you're not screwing things up, you're not cooking that much, right? Okay, so let's see here. So with scrambled, I kind of like the idea of kind of moving things around a little bit. Okay, I think we need to heat this one up a little bit more. So this is actually a great experience, guys. You guys are getting to experience what happens when you actually got the pan hot enough, but literally just because I took those off of the pan for a couple seconds, you guys probably actually didn't even hear it. You guys probably didn't hear the sizzle of the eggs going in today. It's usually gonna be a sign that maybe a couple things might stick, and that's okay, right? Yeah, I can already feel it. We might be able to flip them, who knows? Anybody else believe in miracles? I believe in miracles. So, as I was saying before, my big selling point for my customers, specifically with eggs, and again, I'm talking about eggs more right now, obviously, because I'm making them for you. My transition is, when I'm talking about Cutco, like pans for the first time to a customer, is like, how can I burst the bubble, not even burst the bubble, how can I pop the fear bubble right away to make them believe that everything that I have to say after the fact is truthful and actually works? So my first thing that I do with all of my customers is I talk about eggs. Some people, they do the water test, where they put a little bit of water into a skillet or into a saucepan, and they mix it around, and they feel that lid gets stuck. And that's great. But in my opinion, talking about how awesome the waterless, low moisture aspects, that's just like a cherry on top, right? Like that's not the reason why people buy our stuff. The reason why people buy our stuff is they're like, cool, I'm gonna be able to not have to buy pots and pans in 2 years. You sure about that? I'm like, I guarantee it. Right? Because I've had mine for 13 years, and I haven't had to replace them, right? Because again, I kind of joke, I tell this to my customers, and you guys probably actually have customers that are similar to this. I kind of joke, I'm like, yeah, Mrs. Jones, it's kind of funny, specifically Americans. I'm like, yeah, it seems like every 3 to 5 years, like clockwork, we just light $300 on fire. And we just go to the store, and we're like, all right, this is gonna be the set of pots and pans I'm not gonna have to replace. And we spend $300 again. And then 2 months in, they're like, God, they suck. But then you just out of ego, you're like, I still have to use them, right? I'm just gonna keep using them because I don't wanna have to use them. Oh, this is perfect. They're so bad. These are so bad, guys. It's amazing. They're so good. So bad. Didn't get the pan hot enough. Actually, it's actually not that bad. It's not great though. It's a perfect example though. So I always show examples too, guys, of specifically my self-cooking, which is also important that you're using your self-cooking. Right? And I show examples of me bringing a pan and then cleaning it immediately after. And this is actually, ironically, I use this line as well, and this is a great line. I'm like, ironically, Mrs. Jones, we buy nonstick pans, and half the times, things still stick with nonstick pans. And every customer's like, oh my God, you're totally right. Because they do. They still stick. They still burn. So even though I'm making eggs right now, and again, these aren't perfect, they're actually still low-key kind of actually being fine, which is actually surprising. Shout out Cutco Cookware, right? Again, just a little bit of water though, these things will come right off, right? All right, here, moment of truth, guys, here we go. No, it's a miracle. It's flipped right over, holy cow. There we go, look at that. Even though that wasn't perfect, that took 7 minutes, but that's okay. This, on the other hand, guys, not looking great. It's okay. It's all right. Could have used a little bit more time. Honestly, they're actually not looking that bad.
We can't see it.
That's perfect. That's such good news. Such good news. My confidence is back up again, guys. It's great. All right. So again, the point is, it's like, how can you condition your customers to understanding that if things go wrong, that's okay, and that they're not doing anything wrong. So shout out to Seth Kinzer, an analogy that he uses that I think is a fantastic analogy for you all to use when you're talking about Cutco pots and pans, especially after you've closed them. It's, hey, Mrs. Jones, so you know, have you guys ever bought like a new faucet, right? You buy a new faucet, and then you're trying to figure out like what's too hot and what's too cold, and it takes like 3 weeks to figure it out. You turn the faucet on, you're like, oh, God. And then you turn on the faucet sometimes, like, Jesus, that's cold, right? That's going to be the exact same thing with your pots and pans the first couple weeks you're using them. And that's all right, right? It's going to take some time to figure out what's too hot, what's too cold. So for example, Mrs. Jones, my stovetop goes from 2 to 6, and I cook on a 3. Because that, even though I'm cooking on gas, that's a true medium temperature. Like it's just below the pan, right? And so these customers are like, oh yeah, all right, I can figure that out, right? So if you set up the right expectations, again, you're good. All right, here we go, another moment of truth. Just like that. Voila. And again, this little stuff here, that's okay. You can just literally take it right off. Beautiful. And again, a little bit of water, you're golden. It's unbelievable. It's like these pans work or something. Crazy concept, right? So this is also an example. If you ever do burn anything, right? I love using the phrase, let the water do the work for you. Okay, let the water do the work for you. Okay, so Mrs. Jones, have you ever burned something in a nonstick pan? You have to let the pan soak for like 4 hours to clean it? Oh yeah. And you have to sit there and wait because you know that if you use an abrasive material on that pan, you're just gonna have to toss it, right? The greatest thing about these, Mrs. Jones, you can use metal utensils as much or as little as you want, right? And you're gonna have no problems, right? And if you ever burn anything, all you do, Mrs. Jones, is you take a little bit of water, you put it right back on your stovetop. If you ever burn anything, about 5 minutes, low heat, all that bad stuff will just cook right off. And they're like, really? It's that easy? Like, it's that easy, right? So let the water do the work, right? So put a little bit of water in, and you're golden, okay? So be done with that one. Oh, we're gonna put the other pots and pans that are hot. I guess we're just gonna do everything on this one. All right, so there's your scrambled. Not perfect, right? But hey, there's your scrambled eggs, and they'll come out of the pan, and you're good to go. All right. I think I had more plates. There. All right, we're good. All right. This is realistic cooking right here, guys. It's great. But again, what's interesting about this, I wish I had a sink to show you guys. If we had a sink to show you guys, those are some actually very fluffy eggs. If we had a sink to actually show you guys how easy this is to clean, and again, most of this stuff is just scraping off literally with just a little bit of butter or a little bit of this. If I took a little bit of water, guys, and took a sponge, all of this would come right off the pan, right? But it's okay to set the expectation, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Jones, your pan is going to look like this after you're done cooking. That's all right, okay? Because there's still no chemicals, and this takes 45 seconds to clean it after you're done. That's it, right? So a lot of people are scared to be like, things aren't gonna burn, things are never gonna stick. And if you try to sell Cutco pots and pans like that, it's never gonna happen. I'm pretty sure Jay Bread, you posted a Cutco Facebook page like a month ago or 2 months ago about how you sent some pans in, they just replaced them, right? Ironically, I think when we try to sell pots and pans, again, as I said earlier, we try to overcomplicate the process of all of these technical things. It's like, hey, there's some stainless steel that's built like a beast, and then we got some aluminum in there to make your pans cook really quick, and then we've got some stainless steel on the bottom to make sure everything's conducted and you can cook on an induction stovetop. That's it. Like, your customers don't care about the rivets, right? We talked about this in your knives. They don't really care about thermal resin. They're just like, cool, I'm gonna use it and it's gonna work for a long time. It's the same thing with pots and pans, okay? Now, the next part of talking about pots and pans, I hope these aren't too hot. Do you think I can put these on the tabletop, Eileen, do you think? Specifically after they've cooled down for a little bit? Think it's fine? We're about to find out. Yeah, perfect, Pam. That's what I'm talking about. So, now, the next part of the demo that I always talk about is I get into the lids, okay? Now the lids, talking about lids specifically, the pans with the lids, I think is obviously where you've built this crescendo up to talking about, cool, Mrs. Jones, you can cook. I believe in you. You can cook eggs, right? I can show you how to cook eggs. That's not a super complicated process. What I take now is I take this like slow arc, just like when you're selling an Ultimate, getting them sold about these individual pots and pans or individual knives in the Ultimate set. You're using the same crescendo when you're talking about pots and pans to bring them into the lids, okay? So then I actually ask, ironically, I ask the question, cool, so have you ever heard of low moisture or waterless cookware before? And they're like, I haven't. Mrs. Jones, did your mom or dad or grandparents by chance grow up with those huge big metal utensil or big huge pots and pans that were stainless? And almost all the time, a lot of customers go, oh yeah, I remember those big pots and pans. Those were probably Mrs. Jones low moisture cookware because they were the thing to buy. They're like the nonstick of like the 1990s and 2000s of what like the 1940s were. Like everybody just bought high quality pots and pans because they knew they weren't gonna have to buy them again, right? And ironically in America, I feel like we've taken a step back where we buy cheap, but cheap is expensive, right? So Mrs. Jones, the Cutco pots and pans is the most expensive thing we sell, and it's not close for good reason, right? They're the most expensive thing we sell for good reason, because our health is priceless, right? And once you take this person, by the way, from making sure that they can cook an egg to laying that on them, they're like, okay. What else do you have to say, right? So then we talk about the lids, right? So I'm like, hey, Mrs. Jones, have you ever asked yourself why you boil or steam foods? A lot of those people go, no, I don't know. I don't have any idea why I boil or steam foods, which is ironic. I'm like, the problem is when we boil and steam foods, a lot of the good stuff we're trying to get from the foods, unfortunately, gets lost literally in the sauce, right? So if you guys have ever done corn, Mrs. Jones, before, right? If you've ever done corn, right, and you get this just like sad, white, creamy looking thing in your bowl after you're done cooking, it just kind of doesn't look very good. And that's why I have to add a lot of butter and salt to our corn because we're kind of soaking all of it away, right? You probably noticed, Mrs. Jones, when your mom was growing up, she had 2 or 3 different saucepans out to do different type of vegetables. Right? Because if she put the same vegetables in the same pan, it would just taste like crockly, like broccoli and carrots together, which is not something you'd want to do, right? Like this vegetable medley just sounds disgusting. And ironically, we're gonna do broccoli and carrots in the same pan today, right? And so I say, Mrs. Jones, so the cool thing about the Cookware pots and pans is making eggs is great, and our fry pans are amazing because they're called proper fry pans, right? They go directly from the oven, or stovetop, excuse me, directly into the oven. Right? And then I show them a video, again, of taking chicken and putting it directly into the oven after you sear it. And they're like, oh my God, I do that with my cast iron. I'm like, boom, right? How can I get them to connect to things, right? So everybody loves cast iron, right? Cast iron's great, but it doesn't do great with acidic foods, specifically vegetables, right? So it's like, hey, Mrs. Jones, Mr. Jones, do you guys ever make vegetables? And 90% of people say, oh yeah, love vegetables, right? So the cool thing about our pots and pans, Mrs. Jones, is you unleash or unlock an opportunity to do something that you wouldn't be able to do with most other pots and pans, right? So the analogy I give them is I show them, by the way, at this point in time, this is where you'll take a little bit of water, fill the bottom of the 1 quart saucepan up, put a lid on, and just give it a shake, right? Shake, 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 shake. You should be able to see some water kind of get out. Once the water gets out a little bit, then you say, cool, Mrs. Jones, do me a favor, pick the lid up gently for me. And every time without fail, they'll pick up the lid and they'll be like, oh my God, it kind of gets stuck, right? I'm like, yeah, Mrs. Jones, that's a good thing, okay? That means what's cool about our Cookware pots and pans is once you put a lid on, you're essentially creating a vapor seal for your food directly on your stovetop. So what's interesting is you could take this 6 3/4 Dutch oven, right? And you could do a whole chuck roast in this pan without ever even having to turn your oven on in 45 to 50 minutes on a medium to low temperature, right? After about 35 to 40 minutes, that's where I'll take my meat thermometer, I'll put it in there, see how it's doing. If I need a little bit more time or a little bit less time, I'm good, right? So what's cool is even on a pan that's as big as that 6 3/4 Dutch oven, that same thing is going to apply where that vapor seal forms. So again, have you guys ever cooked with an Instapot? And what does the customer always say? Yeah, I've cooked with an Instapot. They're great, right? I say, cool, Mrs. Jones. When you buy the Cookware pots and pans, you essentially get 9 Instapots. You just don't have to plug them in. And they're like, oh, really? That's it? I'm like, really? That's it. Okay, so we're going to do ground beef. Ground beef today is about as easy as it gets. I love ground beef. I eat ground beef all the time. What I love about ground beef is I can do a pound of ground beef in, give or take, about 7.5 minutes. I just turned it down a little bit. It's just a little hot. Yeah, cooking on a new cooktop. I can't see the flame. Okay. Now, you guys might know this, you might not know this, okay? With meat in general, specifically chicken, burgers, steaks, okay? Once you put it on there, just don't touch it for like 3 to 5 minutes, right? Depending on what you're doing. If you're doing a massive 16-ounce ribeye, right, you're probably gonna wanna sear that bad boy for longer, closer to like 6 to 7 minutes each side, right? You guys know your meats better than I know your meat. You can do whatever you want, right? So the point is when you're doing this though, I like ground beef. What I can do with ground beef is I can put ground beef in here. I mean, set a timer. Yeah, 6, 7 minutes, we're gonna be good to go. Now with broccoli and carrots. Oh, I didn't even turn this on. Oh, that's such a bummer. Doing too many things at once. All right, so with broccoli and carrots, the great thing about broccoli and carrots, guys, is you don't really need to add butter or oil at all if you don't want to. Super great, Chad. Super great. I think 300 is like a, I don't really know how to tell what's too hot and what's too cold with this thing, but it's okay. So we're gonna do broccoli and carrots together though. All right, so this is the new 4-quart Dutch oven. Best pan ever. It's pretty slick. Right now, so for some people that like vegetables, you guys might like vegetables with a little bit of char. Like when I do broccoli, I like a little bit of char with my broccoli. Today we're not gonna do that. So what we'll do here is we're gonna take a little bit of water, not much else, but we're gonna put the carrots and the broccoli. So we're gonna do broccoli on one side, as much as we can. Shout out to Eileen again for helping me cut all this stuff up. This one does not need to be preheated. And then carrots. Okay, now specifically with vegetables, the reason why you don't really need to preheat with vegetables, guys, is that specifically vegetables, they're very water soluble, right? So I'm gonna add a little bit of water. You don't need to add a lot of water with this. And again, we don't have quite enough vegetables to fill it all the way up. But with vegetables specifically, fill your pans as full as you possibly can. Okay, if you're doing carrots, don't put an amount of carrots that would fill up a 1 quart and a 3 quart, unless you're doing chicken and steak and other things with it. Fill up, if you're just doing vegetables, fill it up to the brim, as high as you possibly can. The reason why you want to do that is to really unleash the power of waterless, low moisture cookware, is letting the moisture from the vegetables do its job. And there's not enough moisture in a small amount of carrots to fill up a 3-quart saucepan, and that's why you're gonna have things that burn. So like having the right tool for the right job is really important with knives. Having the right pan for the right job is also super important as well, right? Now, for example, if you're making a pancake, it's okay to make a pancake on a griddle, right? That's fine, right? But you could also do 1 pancake on an 8-inch fry pan if you wanted to. Right now, when it comes to a skillet, let's say you wanted to do like 5 or 6 pounds of ground beef. You're not gonna do 5 to 6 pounds of ground beef in the skillet. It's just too much ground beef for that pan, right? So that's where the beautiful wok comes into play, right? So again, this will take a little bit. So to give you guys an idea of how I'm talking about my pots and pans, I would highly recommend having a cookware folder in your guys' iPhone, and you guys can see my cookware album is bam, right there. Right at the top. And I have hundreds of videos and pictures, in this album. Hundreds. Okay? Now, granted, my circle of influence within Cutco, we sell a lot of pots and pans. So when Luciano has a great new video, guess who he sends that to? He sends it to me and Seth because he's like, dude, just check out what I just made. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to save that, right? Mike Dowd has one of the best videos that has ever been created on his Instagram, and it's him doing a pineapple upside down cake that takes you 45 minutes or 30 minutes. He does it in a 37-second video. And I just screen grabbed it. I'm like, hey, Mike, can you send that to me? He's like, absolutely, right? So I've had a lot of people in this room actually ask me, hey, Bert, can you send me your iCloud folder? I'm not going to do it. And the reason I'm not going to do it is you have to put in the work to build up your own cookware folder. Now, you can absolutely steal a picture or a video from me, absolutely. But I'm not going to sit here and send you 250 videos, right, or 250 pictures that I've taken for you guys to have a little bit more like success selling pots and pans, because you have to put the work in. To get better at pots and pans, I know it's all done. So anyway, he does the pineapple upside down cake in like 35 minutes. I did Rice Krispie treats with Colleen and I. We did Rice Krispie treats in the wok. We take a half a stick of butter after preheating it, melts it around the pan. We take a little bit of butter, put the butter in there, take a whole bag of marshmallows, Mrs. Jones. They're like, what? A whole bag of marshmallows? You mix them around. Yeah, it's crazy, Mrs. Jones. Look, the freaking marshmallows are just literally #service. Should have connected to the Wi-Fi. It's a picture, essentially it's a video, right, of the eggs, there we go. The eggs gliding, or the marshmallows gliding around, right? And then we take they melt all the way down, we add the Rice Krispies, mix them around, and you're done. And literally from start to finish, guys, from preheating the pan to being done with Rice Krispies, it took us 10 minutes. 10 minutes. That's it. Right? So I'm just showing videos and pictures. Again, I'm going to show you the example that Brian Carter has on his Instagram or Facebook, I believe. And it's bacon, just torched bacon. So I'm going to get back to that picture. That pan looks like absolute crap. And here's the problem, Mrs. Jones. If you had that pan and it was a nonstick pan, you'd have to wait 4 hours for you to be able to clean it. This, he's going to take the pan. It's a hot pan. He's going to put a little bit of water in there, let the water do the work for you. About 5 minutes later, that's all you need. He's just going to scrape, and all that bad stuff comes right off the pan. That's it. Now, I don't recommend. I always give Brian a hard time for this video because he pours bacon grease directly down the sink. And I'm like, I don't put bacon grease directly on the sink. It's his sink, not mine, right? But I'm like, what's great about this pan, Mrs. Jones, is Brian bought these pans back in 2008, and they still look like that after he's done with it. And they're like, oh my God. And here's the thing. I'm a big believer in having your customers say, oh, I do that. And that video showed me that this guy, who's 31, who's not even cooked for half as long as I've cooked for, could do that. I can do that. Right. 6 minutes. Say it again. It's been 6 minutes. There we go. This ground beef looks tasty. Too bad nobody can eat it, unfortunately. So usually I would have 2 hands. I'd put this down, but I'm too scared to put this hot pan onto a Cutco tablecloth and light it on fire. Anyway, it's actually kind of interesting though. Like this ground beef has been going for about 6 minutes, and there's not much pink left. And it's only been 6 minutes. All right. And again, you guys can see, right, just for the sake of example, nothing is really getting stuck here, right? Right, it's just cooking. And I didn't even look at it. Usually, by the way, guys, I'm sitting here on top of my stuff because I want to eat faster, right? And I'm cooking after I'm usually mixing in specifically ground beef after about 3 minutes just to kind of put some salt, pepper, all that jazz in there, right? Nothing complicated, right? That vapor seal, guys, is not a joke. It works. If you haven't actually seen it happen, like the vapor seal, it just kind of sits there and floats on the pan, right? So, the last thing I will say, and then we'll open this up to Q&A a little bit, right, is there are 5 videos that you need to have, okay? The first video is you making eggs, right? So if you want to do this in one video, you can, but I recommend snippets, 10, 15 seconds tops. Okay, so I'll show you mine. I show a customer what a pan should not do, which is preheating a pan and it sizzles, right? It's not hot enough because it doesn't do the bounce. Right? So then I go to a video to show them, here's what you're actually looking for, Mrs. Jones. right? They can literally see the water do an actual like jig. I'm like, that's when it's ready. I kind of joke, I'm like, Mrs. Jones, once the pan's bouncing for butter, that means you're ready, right? And they're like, okay, I can do that, right? Then I take my butter, throw my butter in there, right? Do the thing, take the eggs, put them in there. Now the cool thing is you can use metal utensils, because if you scratch anything, it's just cosmetic, right? And then I say, once you flip it, you'll get an omelet. Somebody's probably calling me to buy cookware. Just kidding. It just slides right out of the pan, right? So having a video of you preheating the pan, putting butter in, putting the eggs in, and having an omelet slide out of pans. That's important, okay? That's the first one, okay? Second one, having a pan that is burnt. Having a pan like the bacon video, right? Just torched. Show a pan that is torched and show the process of you cleaning it up. Who here uses Barkeeper's Friend? It is amazing. Use it, right? This customer just showed this to me. This was a perfect video. This is from a customer too. She loves her pans so much. She lost her sense of smell. She got sick. This is tomato soup that she forgot on her pan, just torched. But she's like, I did the thing. I put the water in. It was a lot, so I had to boil the whole freaking pan. She sends me a picture of the boiling water. Bam. And that's a customer. And this is a customer though, guys, that after about 2 or 3 years of me like being really intentional with my pots and pans and my pitch, her expectations were perfect. It's because she knew that she was gonna burn stuff. She knew that she was gonna screw up. But if she ever screwed up or if she ever burned anything, she could put some water into the pan and then she could just put a little bit of Barkeepers and it's perfect. Okay, the ground beef is done for sure. I have no idea where to put this pan. I'm gonna put this on this guy. Hopefully it doesn't melt, don't melt. All right, so that's ground beef and as you guys can see, there's nothing at the bottom of that at all. Oh God. Besides a little bit of grease, a little bit of butter. All right, that's it. Okay, so we're just gonna turn this off. All right, so we'll clean that up later, Eileen. Okay, now, and then the couple other things that you need as well is a couple of wow factor videos, okay, or pictures. I have a picture taken from, shout out to the original marketing team that did the original cookware videos where they've got 21 ears of corn in the Dutch oven. I've got a screenshot of that on my picture. I'm like, yeah, Mrs. Jones, you can literally do 21 ears of corn with a cup of water and you're done in 20 minutes. And they're like, whatever, right? So I have a wow video. I would recommend having a steak video because everybody loves cast iron. So shout out Seth and I, we did a steak up in North Dakota State Fair this year. No butter, no oil, right? So we do a video of us flipping it. It's perfect sear. And then I do an after, which is just this beautiful medium rare. And all of the guys that are like, oh, dude, I'm a cast iron guy, ride or die. They're like, wait a second, right? I can cook. And the crazy thing is cast iron does not have what? Lids, right? So when a person wants to preheat a cast iron and they want to do a steak on a cast iron, it takes so much longer than it does with our pans, okay? So technically not 5, technically it's 5 videos, but you need to have multiple snippets for eggs. So eggs, having something burn, and having a steak or a chicken video. If you're a vegetarian or a vegan, borrow a video of a person that is making steak because showing a person that eats meat how they can cook in these, they'll be super excited, okay? So in my handout, guys, I actually have these on here on purpose just because these are just basic things, which is pop fear bubbles early, teach through videos, use examples, right? So having eggs or a protein, having a burnt versus a clean pan, right? Remember 2 things, Mrs. Jones. Medium to low is all you need to know, right? Medium to low is all you need to know, and always preheat your pan 90-ish seconds before you put butter or oil on the pan. I'm gonna take this lid off, actually. That vapor seal is not a joke, right? So again, I use this line, little 4.4 cookware talking points. The Cutco pans are easy to use, easy to clean, and built like a tank. I use that all the time, over and over and over again, okay? Setting proper expectations to reduce returns. Food will stick and burn from time to time, and that's all right. Barkeeper's Friend's your best friend. This is something that I did today. Eileen saw me do it. Cutco comes with a layer of protective coating. It's called emulsion, and it comes on all high-quality stainless steel pans. So before they use it, they should rinse it off some soap and water, right, before they do it. I didn't have soap. I just had some water, so I put some water on there. And what I recommend to my customers, this is like a wives' tale that my customers from like the 50s, 60s that had Cutco did before they bought their wherever pots and pans or their other high quality stainless steels. You take a cap full of white vinegar, pour that in the pan with the hot and soapy water, and do that with every single pan before you use it. That takes that layer of emulsion completely off, so you don't have to worry about things sticking and burning. So maybe with that 12-inch fry pan, that might have actually been the case where I didn't get all of it off. It had nothing to do with the temperature of the pan. And then emailing customers with videos and simple reminders, okay? I remember when Jason sent me his cookware video, or his cookware, his template. For those of you that coached with him in 2017, he was a pioneer with selling cookware in general, but it was like a laundry list of recipes, and it was just, oh my God, there's so much to know about the pots and pans. So now I have like 4 bullet points with all the things that I told them. So medium to low is all you need to know. Preheat, right, for 90 seconds. Barkeeper's friend's your best friend. And here's a couple videos to watch, right? So I use 2 videos specifically. Josh Muller's video, stainless steel, how to cook eggs in stainless steel, if you want to write that down, how to cook eggs with stainless steel by Josh Muller, your knife guy, on YouTube. Send that to your customers. And then Jason Jeffrey's 3366 recipe, which is him doing chicken, carrots, and apples in the same pan in, I think it's 18 minutes, with no butter, no oil, except seasoning on the chicken. That's all he does. So I send those 2 videos to all of my customers, and then I put at the very bottom, I'm like, hey, if anything burns or sticks, shoot me an email and I'll send you the video on how to clean it. So now they're not going to Cutco, they're going to me, who knows how to actually help them in the situation, right? And then last but not least, down at the bottom, I love using the cleaver against the griddle. So what I do for like perspective's sake is I'll take the cleaver and I'll say, yeah, Mrs. Jones, this is a $250 knife. This is you can kind of imagine how expensive the pans are. And now the person thinks the griddle is going to cost them $680 or like $700. They're like, oh my God. And then they look at the wok and they're like, oh my God, there's so much more metal, right? And then I get into the price comparison, right? In the price comparison, I think this is really important to say, right? Using Salad Master comparison, we've got word from Cutco Corporate like 2 years ago, stop using, if you're still using a Kitchen Craft price list, stop using that. You can use the Salad Master price list though. And this is, again, like Salad Master has gone up in price, and this was a Salad Master comparison back in 2000, I believe, 17. So the prices have gone up since then. But the important thing is they've got a sticker tag of a set that's, again, about similar size to ours, that's $6,200. And ours is still less than that, even with the 4-quart edition, which is cool. And I say this exact word, the difference between Salad Master and Cutco is Salad Master only makes pans. That's how they keep their lights on. Their sales reps make full commission on the pans, because Cutco sales reps, we sell knives, flatware, amongst other things. With the cookware, we get a reduced commission. So just because of this, I just get paid less, but you as a customer actually pay a little bit less for your products that are actually guaranteed forever, not just like the lifetime of the owner like our competitors, right? So when you're setting up for price comparison, use this, right? You can also print off all-clad pricing, but use this, put this in your books if you guys don't have it in your price sheets already. Yeah, let's see how these carrots are doing. They're already almost done. Yeah, they're doing great. So the real test is the bottom of the pan. Let's see how the bottom looks. Oh, that's gonna totally stay. Yep. I think they look delicious. So they probably still need a little bit more time. But yeah, what's interesting about broccoli specifically and carrots is that when you're cooking them, what I recommend to my customers too is when you're doing broccoli and carrots, using a medium to low heat is super important for sure. And then I always recommend too, like I love butter and I love oil, so I actually like putting butter in my my pots and pans for when I'm doing broccoli and carrots. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can still preheat if you want to. By the way, I know Justin, you said that. You can preheat if you want to. If you preheat your pans before you put broccoli or carrots in, you're gonna get a char on the bottom layer of whatever you put on, which is totally fine. But a lot of your customers are gonna be doing vegetables in like a 1 to 3 quart saucepan. And Seth Kinzer and Kelly Kinzer cook for their beautiful daughter Olivia all the time. And like what Seth says and what works really well is 8 to 12 minutes, right, on a medium-low temperature for the amount of vegetables that you're doing in a 1 to 2 quart, closer to 10 to 15 minutes for a 3 quart, and usually maybe 15 to 20 when you're doing something as big as a 4 quart, because there's just more vegetables, they just have to cook a little bit longer. So with that, thank you for interacting with this whole situation, trying to cook eggs, cook some ground beef, and cook some vegetables for everybody that you technically can't eat. But with that, that's what I got. So if you guys have any questions on anything, you guys are feel free to shoot away. Otherwise, I know that some people have to get out of here by 2 o'clock. So yes, thank you. All right. So it gets recorded. Can you pass that back for me?
Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I love the cookware and I sell it. It's probably one of my favorite things to sell. The biggest issue I have, and I just want to see how you handle it, is with all-clad coming in. I have a lot of customers talking about all-clad, how great they are, and like, oh, I just bought it. I'm having a tough time just, I guess, not convincing them, but trying to explain why Cutco is better than all-clad. I just want to know how you handle that.
Sure. So I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but basically what I kind of tell my customers is like, if they already own it, it's like, yeah, these are like an all-clad on steroids. So genuinely, if you love your all-clad, Mrs. Jones, like our pans just cook faster, they're more efficient, and there's also a couple technical differences that you might really appreciate about the Cutco pots and pans. The first difference is that we don't use rivets in our handles, whereas again, all-clad does use rivets, so our handles do not get hot. Now, if you put them in the oven, Mrs. Jones, they will get hot. So be careful when you put them in the oven. The other difference, Mrs. Jones, is that all-clad, they use an 1810 stainless. We use a surgical grade stainless. So the difference between ours and theirs is even though all-clad is great, right, over the period of a few years, food will actually get stuck into the pores of the all-clad pans, right? Whereas with our pans, because there's a surgical grade layer of metal, they're perfect. So you don't have to worry about food getting stuck in any pores because there are no pores. And that's the big selling point. And like, honestly, if you're telling to a person that already has all-clad, just to be transparent, they're gonna be a tough sell. Like they just are, because they've got really good stuff. So it's like, hey, if your pans are like just, I mean, if you've had your all-clad forever and you're looking to kind of maybe upgrade, that's a great client, because it's like you love your stuff already, you're gonna love these. Of course, there's a million ways to sell, but you'd be like, yeah, if you have a cabin or a kid, you can give your all-clad down to them if you wanna upgrade yours, right? Like, it's hard to sell a person that has Salad Master. Right? It's hard to sell a person that has Kitchen Craft or Lifetime, right? Because they already get it. They get the product. It's like, yeah, if you just want to upgrade, right? Or you just want to get, again, new shiny stuff, right? Get our stuff. They're great. They're going to last you forever. I joke the difference between our stuff and the other, like, waterless cookwares is I joke that we just don't have knobs. And we don't have, like, the fancy-dancy gadgets, but knobs break. And that's why we don't have knobs, right? So they're just going to be super low maintenance for the rest of your life. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, Vernon. Pass the mic so they can hear it. Rob's next. Rob's next. Perfect. Yep. You're good.
I just like a repeat of the cheapest expensive pans or most expensive, the health part.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically when I get done transitioning through the eggs specifically, I just basically transition by saying, again, so Mrs. Jones, just so you have an idea, have you ever heard of waterless cookware? And they'll say, no, I haven't heard of waterless cookware, or low moisture cookware. I use low moisture more than I use waterless, just because waterless doesn't really make sense. People actually literally think that they don't need to use water. And then you get people saying, like, what do I do with spaghetti? And you're like, Jesus. So the benefit behind low moisture cookware, Mrs. Jones, is have you ever asked yourself why you boil or steam foods? No, I don't know why I boil or steam foods, right? So our pans, they give you the opportunity to cook healthier, right? And then I say something along the lines of, the pots and pans, Mrs. Jones, are the most expensive thing we sell, and it's not even close, right? But for good reason, right? And I say, for the pans are the most expensive thing we sell for good reason, because there's nothing more important than our health, because our health is priceless, right? And again, what's great about cookware, guys, is you can kind of like, I mean, I feel like I've kind of figured out a system that works really, really well for me. But like the pots and pans, it's like, how can you find that crescendo for yourself to get people excited? I found that by using videos, like ironically, we see these guys that sell pots and pans next to us at home shows, at state fairs, and they're like, how do they sell so many pots and pans? Oh my God, they're selling so many pots and pans. I'm like, they asked us the same question, how we sell so many knives, right? We're just demoing the knives. They're just demoing the cookware. So the power of videos, right, is you doing a demo for them without actually having to cook, right? So the power of showing a visual is vital. And I think a lot of people don't use videos enough. Like I'm just literally just, I kind of joke. I'm just like a teleprompter. I'm just like showing them stuff, but I'm just regurgitating some visuals of what they're already seeing. I'm like, this is something you can do, right? So specifically with that aspect of talking about the pots and pans, it's like talking about the health benefits of them. I really truly believe that if you can tell a person, like if you can get them bought into like, hey, like my health is really important, so I don't want to be putting my pans, my vegetables into like a nonstick pan that I don't really know what's in it, it'd be beneficial for me to have these, right? And then anything else you have to say after that, they're open to hearing. Does that help? Great. Yep.
What's up, Bert?
What's up, Vernon?
Let's give Bert another round of applause real quick. So just questions specifically on the eggs, because I've heard back and forth that you don't have to preheat for eggs.
Preheat for eggs.
And then
Preheat for eggs.
And then do you preheat on medium? Do you fluctuate between like low and medium for eggs specifically? Like what have you found is just that perfect temperature?
Yeah, so for me, I think everybody's different, right? I just keep it at 3 on my stovetop, which is just right below, it's basically right below a medium. Matt McCartney, who sells other pots and pans as well, he's a big believer that you don't need to preheat as long as we preheat, right? But I truly believe that if you want to make it easy for customers, medium, and again, there's 2 ways. What I tell my customers is your pan is going to give you feedback, okay? So this is a good thing to put down. Your pan will always give you feedback, Mrs. Jones. If your food is sticking, you're not preheating long enough. If your food is burning, you're cooking on too high a heat, right? So if your food is sticking, your food is not hot enough, or your pan is not hot enough, more than likely. And then if your food is burning, your pan is too hot, right? And so I tell my customers, Mrs. Jones, just so you know, like you are gonna burn something and it's gonna be all right. To clean it, you're gonna pour a little bit of water in it, sit for 5 minutes, scrape it off, put some barkeeper's friend on, try it again. You're gonna be all right, right? So for me, I tell my customers that your medium is gonna be different than my medium. And then I talk about the cookware guide, right? I show the cookware guide to every single customer. I'm like, yeah, here it actually shows if you cook on gas, right? Here's the proper temperature. Here's a medium high heat, here's a medium, and here's a low heat. So try to find, if you're cooking on gas, that true medium heat, right? Just use the visual that Cutco gives us, which is great. So I talk a lot about the cookware guide. I talk about the stack cooking, and I can talk more about stack cooking if you want me to. Yeah.
How do you incorporate, or do you incorporate the coated pans from American Kitchen?
Nope. Haven't sold them. Won't sell them.
Bam.
Yep.
My question is for, how do you handle the objection for Hexclad?
Yep. That's a great question. Who here has heard of Hexclad? All right, great. All right, so Hexclad's actually a pretty easy one, and it's because I've been doing home shows and state fairs for so long that Hexclad actually was a big thing already before the last couple years, where it kind of has had this big push because Gordon Ramsay backed it. So essentially, Mrs. Jones, Hexclad is just selling itself as a high quality nonstick pan. The problem that I've found that my customers have run into, right, and I just use my customers because my customers have come up and been frustrated with Hexclad. They're sold that they have a lifetime guarantee. Guess what the lifetime guarantee does not cover with Hexclad? Scratching, chipping, flaking. That's the one thing that frickin' happens with pans, non-stick pans, that's guaranteed for life, actually isn't covered. So what I found is a lot of people that even cook with Hexclad, even though, again, it's great right away, after 6 months to a year, inevitably, it starts to flake and chip, And then unfortunately, you're just out of luck. So then you spent, whatever, $200 on a nonstick pan instead of $100 on a nonstick pan, or they spent $900 on a set instead of $500 on a set. You're just going to kind of be in the same situation you started with. Even though Gordon Ramsay backs it, Gordon Ramsay's just getting paid to back it. So of course he got an offer. He's going to take it, right? Ironically, if you see him cooking on his shows, what is he cooking with, Mrs. Jones? Stainless steel, because that's what cooks have to cook with, is stainless steel. Now, there's also a fantastic video, by the way, that I screen grabbed. Who here has heard of Skip Bayless? Okay, his brother is a cook, and his name is Rick Bayless. So if you go to Rick Bayless's Instagram, he had this awesome video. It's perfect. I'm going to make a video like this somehow in my own kitchen. But he talks about, so just look it up. I'm not going to show you the whole thing. It's a minute and a half. But he shows, it's a chef using a stainless steel pan, cooking chicken, preheating it, and he's so dramatic. So dramatic. I don't know if I can get this next to my microphone. So he sits there and he goes, we put the pan on and we wait.
And we wait.
And he just sits there.
Okay,
Super dramatic. He's like, we wait.
Or I could show you this little trick. When you put some water on there and it dances around, you know that the temperature is hot enough. Then I'm going to add a little bit of oil to the pan. We know that after about 5 seconds or so, it will be hot enough. The oil will be hot enough.
Okay. So this is a chef. I show this to every single customer on every single video that I'm doing, because I'm like, this is a chef using stainless steel pans. And he's telling you to wait. Be patient. Let the pan get hot, then you start cooking. If you do that, you're going to be fine. So specifically with the HexClad stuff, essentially it's just popping a fear bubble that they're going to eventually have to replace them. They're just sold this bill of goods that they're not going to have to replace them because they're guaranteed, but the lifetime guarantee is not actually truthful. Yes. All right. I think that's all we got for you, right? All right. Thanks, guys. Rick Bayless. Rick Bayless.
Thank you, Bert.
Bayless. If you guys have questions after the fact, by the way, I'm going to have to clean up for a little bit, so you guys can feel free to come up after, but I know a lot of you guys have to get going, so thank you again.